Hey folks, it's Hal Walker with the Sidewalk Congress coming to you today with episode number 2. As I promised you previously, we are still trying to get together information about the attempted assassination of President Trump. A little bit more information is coming out. So we're going to try to address those things for you today. But joining us today is Aaron Luck. He's a fellow Sidewalk Congressman. He's just a good old boy like I am, highly educated, but we also believe in our country and being outdoors. And we'll talk a little bit about the various issues. So with no further ado, we're going to hop right into it. You know, the shooting. Here we are. What's that? 6 days since they tried to assassinate President Trump. And a whole lot has come out because of that. When you look at the facts behind this, he was in Pennsylvania doing a speech, and it's apparent that the Secret Service did a very poor job protecting him. There's some allegations out there that they pulled some security detail off to send over to Dr. Jill, you know, the PhD person. She's not really a doctor, but they call her Dr. Jill. You know, allegedly some of those resources were sent there. Allegedly, the Secret Service has blamed some local resources that were there to help them out. But what we do know is this 20-year-old was able to get off a few shots. He struck President Trump in the ear, killed a fireman that was there to encourage President Trump, and injured a couple other people. Since that time, they've come out with a little more information. The head of the Secret Service, Miss Cheadle, who used to be a bigwig at PepsiCo, so I'm not sure how she's made her way back into heading up the Secret Service. Rumor is she used to be on Jill Biden's detail, and of course we know Jill's running the show, not Slick Joe. So that's probably how she made their way back in there. But the evidence is appearing to show that they knew this man was there for about an hour before he actually took those shots. They lost track of him. He was walking around with a rangefinder. And I believe Aaron will address some of this as well as myself here shortly about this shot. I mean, it was approximately 130 yards. And if you've got any experience shooting a long rifle, especially one with a scope on it, a 130-yard shot is not really a challenge. You should be able to put together a group probably an inch to an inch and a half wide. I think our only hope with President Trump is God was looking out for him, and this idiot up on the building went for a headshot. If he would have tried to shoot Trump's big body, he probably would have been successful in laying in a few rounds. Aaron Luck, come on in and tell us what you're thinking about these things. Tell us about your thoughts of the shooting and what you understand's happened, and just your feelings as a fellow sidewalk.
Well, thanks first off, Hal, for having me. But I'm like everybody else. I'm kind of just shocked and dismayed at how this person was allowed to even get off a shot, let alone what I believe was. I look at it a little different than a lot of people. I think it was a highly accurate shot that, but for him turning his head, would have killed him. And the fact that this guy was able to, first of all, get up there unnoticed or whatever, and then have the time to, I'm sure, calm his breath. And because anyone who's ever had a big monster buck or turkey walk out in front of them, you know, the first thing you got to do before you pull that trigger is you got to kind of calm yourself down, because the adrenaline's pumping and you're excited and everything else. And for him to be able to get off a shot like that, and I guess 2 additional shots that apparently didn't miss by much or hit somebody else, I just find that almost remarkable that was even allowed to happen, to be quite honest with you.
What do you think about their statements? As of today, they're saying that they've located no ladder. Do you think this man had some assistance in getting on top of that building, or he just Spider-Man'd it, or how do you think
Well, I, like you, listen to Dan Bongino a good bit, and from what I understand through his reporting and his show, is that there was no ladder actually there. Is that apparently, my understanding is he got up there on an air conditioner unit, and I imagine like a unit that hangs out the window of your house, because that matches up with what I've been hearing from the local police that actually because when the local police got up there, one of the officers had to boost the other officer up to the roof, where I guess the kid then turned the gun on him and he had to duck back down. So I don't know about this whole ladder, no ladder thing. I just don't know enough about it. But from the person that I consider to have the most reliable information, being Dan Bongino, he got up there on an air conditioner unit, just kind of crawled up onto the air conditioner. Then he got up on the roof, and that's another thing, Hal, that's just so inexplicable about this event is apparently the gun was in a backpack in pieces. And anyone who's ever had an AR or knows anything about an AR, breaking one apart, the barrel and the stock is a 2-pin process. There's nothing to it. But for him to be able to have enough time to go up there, fumble around, put the daggum thing together, and still get a shot off is, to me, again, just cool.
It's kind of like the shot that was taken at President Kennedy so many years ago. There was so much discussion about the rifle used in that case and the speed of the vehicle and how that was such an amazing shot to be able to accomplish that. And I'm not applauding the killer of President Kennedy at all, but again, just through history, people have been amazed and kind of puzzled as to how that shot could have actually been made with such accuracy. Yeah,
and so it's just crazy. I mean, I know that's not adding a lot of depth to the conversation, but it's just so bewildering to me how that occurred. And then it's even more bewildering to me how these Secret Service people and the Department of Homeland Security are acting as if this was some kind of a successful operation. I don't see how you can have somebody within a quarter inch of death and shots being fired and other innocent civilians dead or injured and call that a success story for the Secret Service. It's just arrogance that has no bounds.
Well, some of what I'm hearing today, Aaron, is a lot of DEI discussion. You've got Kim Cheadle again, a woman which if she was highly skilled, if she had the ability to pick up somebody like President Trump and get him out of a dangerous situation, I would not balk at all about what she's doing. But, it's apparent that she came back into the Secret Service after some time away in the corporate world. And she promised she was going to hire about a third of the agents as women or minorities. And hey, again, women and minorities are great. But, President Trump's not a small man. And if you look at the group that tried to usher him off the stage, it looked like about 4 or 5 of them were about 5-foot tall women that looked like they probably spent more time making biscuits at Hardee's than they did on the range or doing PT work. Even the women out there in the government are speaking out about the role of these ladies with the Secret Service. If you can do the job of a man, great, go do it. So many of the women are out there saying the exact same thing. Let's listen to what Kim Cheadle has to say about all this, Aaron. Hold on for me. Let's get this going.
All right. Cheadle said about why they didn't have anybody up on that roof. You mentioned this. Here's what she said.
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And so, the decision was made to secure the building from inside.
Who is most responsible for this happening?
What I would say is that the Secret Service is responsible for the protection of the former president.
So the buck stops with you?
The buck stops with me. I am the director of the Secret Service. It was unacceptable, and it's something that shouldn't happen again.
So here we are. We're listening to Kim Cheadle talk about this, and the sloped roof. We've all seen the pictures now. There was a very slight slope to it, but I guess she was worried more about OSHA, a fellow government agency, than she was protecting, future President Trump. And then when she was asked if the buck stopped with her, she said yes, but she's also said she's absolutely not going to resign. Thoughts on that, Aaron?
All right. Well, if you don't mind, Hal, let me back up to what you were saying earlier. I've got, which is not unusual. I seem to always have a different view than most people. But Hal, I want you. I've known you now for a long, long time, and I know your beautiful wife, Charlene. And what I want to know is this: is at what point in our society did it become acceptable for women to protect men from a bullet? We are so sideways and upside down. I don't even understand it. Forget about size, forget about training, forget about strength, forget about speed. I want everyone out there, man or woman listening to this, especially you ladies, is if your husband woke you up in the middle of the night and said, "Honey, I think someone just is downstairs. Go check on it." You would never look at that man the same again. Yet we take these women and we send them out there to protect men. I can't get over that, let alone the whole DEI thing. Now, yes, there is a place for women in the Secret Service. If you have a female protectee, I understand that. They got to use the restroom, they have to take showers or whatever the case may be. But for women to be putting their bodies, and they didn't even do that, which makes it even more egregious, but for women to be putting their bodies in between a man and a bullet just tells you everything you need to know about the state of our country. That's just not acceptable in a civilized, rational society. You know, I wouldn't throw my daughter in front of a bullet to protect my son. I wouldn't throw my wife in front of a bullet to protect me. And I would expect that there's no man out there worth his salt that would do that either. We got to get over this whole equal. We are equal. Women are great. I have a daughter. Hell, you got two beautiful daughters. We all love women. It's not their job in a civilized society to protect the men. And I know Hal's daughters and I know my daughter. If they were put in a position where their husband or boyfriend or whatever the case may be said to them, go check on the downstairs, I think there's a burglar in the house. When they got back up in that bedroom, that man better be gone.
Aaron, that's a great point. To me, that's why the Sidewalk Congress is such a vital thing for today. You know, we are not the blue bloods, the millionaires that have spent their career chasing politics to get to the national level. We are just everyday people that love this country, that would sacrifice for this country, that are just tired of seeing it being run to the ground by people making the decisions. And you know, you've got an excellent point here, Aaron. When did women start protecting men? Since the beginning of time, that's just never been the case. But it's one thing to give women rights, and they deserve so many rights. So they're equal to men in so many ways. But again, like you said, putting their bodies on the line. You know, these ladies in particular that were helping President Trump on Saturday were a good foot shorter than they were, and they wrapped their arms around him and tried to get him off the stage and ducked their heads. Well, that's not their job. They shouldn't be ducking their heads. If anything, you know, they should stand up strong and tall and cover him as much as possible. But that wasn't the mindset that was going on. So, Aaron, I've got a little bit of an interview from a former sniper that's worked for the good guys. Let's listen to a little bit of what he's got to say.
Let's bring in Florida Congressman and former U.S. Army sniper, Corey Mills. What kind of shot was this, Corey, from 130 yards?
Look, at the end of the day, this is a shot that your basic training boot camp soldier is requested to make within their 9-week period. This is one of the easiest shots, and they train all the way out till 300 or 500. And when I was doing the counter sniper, it wasn't with the United States Army. It was actually when I was with the State Department and was doing this exact thing, which is trying to look at going out with an advanced team, establishing what the perimeter is. And then as a sniper, when you would set up, you'd put together your range sketch or your range fan cards. And that would tell you where your 100, your 200, your 300, and you'd identify the areas of threat that you would be able to mitigate. And if there's multiple targets, you understand that your elevation and windage knob wouldn't have to be messed with, especially at 160 yards. You could literally just look, quickly glance, and know from the reference point, whether it be a building, whether it be a lone tree, whether it be a parking lot, maybe it's a road. Bottom line is that this is massive negligence to the point of me speculating on what was intentional and what wasn't.
Wow. When you're doing a site survey and you're seeing this rooftop not that far away, Why did it look like the counter sniper team was a little surprised?
I can only speculate, and we'll have to wait until the investigation comes out, that they thought local law enforcement was potentially climbing up onto the roof when they saw a dark object on a light roof. But here's the issue.
Wait, you're saying maybe they misconstrued Crooks for local law enforcement?
It's very possible. I don't want to.
So let's interrupt that at that point, Aaron. That's a lot of information already. I know you have had some particular training in firearms through the military. Is it true what he was saying about that shot? Is that something that everybody that goes through maybe basic training, regardless of the service they're going into, is familiar with and required to make?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you work on the range with the M16, and of course we don't have scopes, or at least in OCS they don't have scopes, so you're using peep sights. But yeah, I mean, if you can't make 100-yard shot, then you have no business with a rifle. And that goes, heck, before my kids ever went deer hunting, I made sure that they knew how to humanely and accurately, kill an animal that we would eat. You have to be trained properly. But again, Hal, I go back to, I know this is not a majority opinion, but I go back to, that shot was not a bad shot. It was just that he turned his head. And it's like anything. You can't anticipate that. You don't know what his next movement's going to be. But if he does not turn his head, we would be having a very different conversation right now. And I go back to the same thing. What is he doing there? That's where the issue is. Not that he got the fact that he even got shots off is where the problem lies. That's just, it can't happen.
I would agree. And, again, a lot of the discussion right now is how he got there, why he wasn't noticed, what assets were available. You talked about Dan earlier. Dan's a great resource and a great patriot, but he's got experience. He was with the Secret Service for a long time under two different presidents, and he's very upset by this. And, he was questioning, where was any air support? Were there any drones in the air?
Mm-hmm.
We've seen for years all this drone footage in Benghazi and places like that where it's got FLIR and things like that, and you can see these guys in the dark and you can count them, and you're like, oh, there's 7 of them right there. How hard would it have been to put something like that in the sky and check some of these roofs out? According to the diagram I've seen, that was one of the higher roofs, if not one of the equally high roofs in the area, and it's only 100 plus yards out. Why wasn't someone on there? Well, I think Kim Cheadle said because it had a little bit of a slope to it, and I guess she was just afraid somebody was going to slide off of that roof and get injured.
Yeah, that's a crazy explanation. And that just goes to show you how back to there's no accountability. No one with a straight face would even say that. I mean, let me put it to you this way. I've seen handicap ramps with more of a slope, and I've helped my grandmother walk up those handicap ramps when she was alive, and she was perfectly fine to do it. If my 92-year-old grandmother could do it, I'm sure, well, I don't know about some of those Secret Service agents, but I'm sure that they have at least a couple that could do it. I wouldn't put the woman up there, but again, I mean, how do you come out to the American people with a straight face and say that it's too dangerous because it's sloped less than a handicapped? It's just again, I'm at a loss for words. It's just so unimaginable that they can just say these things and some people apparently believe it.
Well, it's the lefty way, Aaron. When everyone's talking about how bad off Joe Biden is right now, and we saw that in his interview and in his debate. But the truth is, if you go back in time and you think about it, when he was running for election the first time, the ongoing joke was, where's Joe? They didn't bring him out. He wasn't seen in public. He didn't speak in public. I think the deficiencies he's showing right now have been coming along for quite some time, and they just did a great job at hiding it, and that's both his administration and I think a lot of the lefty news agencies we're protecting him. And that's kind of got us where we are today. And, a lot of people are thinking, well, he's done enough. He probably won't be elected. But, here's the problem. He won't be replaced, if he's replaced, until January. And, he's made it clear he goes to bed about 8:00 most nights. So if we have any problems after that, and by the way, the Middle East is very active right about the time Joe's sleeping. Who's going to answer those questions when those calls come in? And we've got to make some decisions immediately. Is it going to be sleepy kid sniffing Joe, or is it going to be Kamala, or someone like Mayorkas, who's now covering for the Secret Service because it falls under his agency? I don't know what that looks like.
Well, I wish I could tell you something, but I think everyone with a brain in their head has the exact same questions that you've just posed, and I don't know that there is an answer to that. I wonder the same thing. I mean, it's not him, because if he's going to bed at 8:00, and I have some experience with sundowners with my grandfather, it's not only a you're tired thing, it's a confusion thing. Where once you get to that time of the day where I guess your body has just said, okay, I've had enough for today. It's not only a physical thing, like you need sleep. It's a mental thing to where your brain doesn't work the way it does during the other hours of the day, the early hours of the day. I don't know. It's obviously, if something were to happen, it's obviously not going to be him, because I don't think he would have the sense to even make a decision.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, let's fast forward, because we're getting short on time. Right now there's a lot of discussion about Joe not coming back. He's recently been diagnosed with COVID, and COVID today is very different from COVID a few years ago, but still he's 80 plus years old, and we wish him the best. We don't wish anything bad to happen to him, but the pressure is on from the Democrats right now to replace him. And I watched an interview earlier today with a Republican senator, Catherine Kammack. She's known as Kat Kammack. She's out of Florida. And she made a statement that if Joe doesn't come back, the Democrats are going to lose $1 billion, with a B, $1 billion of election funds if they don't put Kamala up, their head person. Any thoughts on that? Do you think she's ready?
Well, I think she thinks she's ready, but there's no way she's ready. She's, quite frankly, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'd rather have Joe Biden in charge than her, because I'm scared of what she would do. I'm terrified of what the world would look like under her. I mean, I just don't even want to think about it. But like you said, Hal, I don't know anything about campaign finance law, nor do I pretend to, but I know there is some issue there with the money. But I don't know enough about that to be able to say, well, they can do this or they can do that. But I don't think from an optical standpoint they can pick anyone but her, unless they could somehow convince her she can't win and she would graciously step aside or stay vice president. But I don't foresee that happening either.
No, I don't see her voluntarily letting somebody have her step aside so she could be number 2 again. She checks too many boxes for the DEI people. I've got a few clips here that we're going to listen to, just because she's a lot like Joe. She's a bit of a rambler. So let's check some of these out, Aaron.
Don't ever carry as a personal burden your capacity to do whatever you dream and aspire to do based on other people's limited ability to see who can do what. This is part of what's involved, is that we have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that fucking door down.
Wow. So she's quite the sailor. She's got the good sailor talk. But, what the heck was she saying before she dropped the F-bomb? I mean, it's like, I don't know. It kind of made me feel like one of those pictures you used to see where you kind of had to look at it cross-eyed to really see what was going on in it, because everything else was just kind of blurry colors. But who knows what she's saying? Let's listen to this next part.
A lot of joy. I have to tell you, in our young people and our young leaders, I started a college tour last fall. Yes. And meeting with Gen Z and all these young people who are not waiting around for us to fix things. They are ready to take it on. You know, things like gun violence, yes, climate crisis. And I think that part of what we all embrace and need to acknowledge is that we measure the strength of ourselves not based on who we beat down, but who we lift up. Who we lift up. And let's continue to focus on that as a way to strengthen ourselves, our country, but also to give us joy, right?
Well, there she goes again. Not a whole lot of politics, not a whole lot of country, not a whole lot of fact, just some sweet ramblings, brother.
Honestly, hell, I had to take the headphone off. I can't stand listening to her. You know, it's nonsensical. I've noticed in the last 2 times I have listened to her talk, it sounds like they're trying to urban her up a little bit more slang, a little bit more curse words, a little bit more, was it ebonics? I think, I don't know what they're doing, but I think they're also insulting the black population by doing this, which they're notorious for doing, even though they think they're not doing it. So, you know, Hal, one more thing I was going to say is, you know, if you're a career politician like a Kamala Harris or a Gavin Newsom or a Gretchen Whitmer, are you really willing to step into this disaster after you, because this is your one chance. If any of those 3 run for president and do not beat Donald Trump, politically, they're done. You know, I just wonder how many of these people would say to them, I'm sitting this one out. I'll run against whoever's up next in 2028. You know, because you are really walking into a losing situation here. I don't know what you think about that, but I don't think it's going to be as easy to replace Joe Biden as everyone says. You know, you've worked your whole life to become a good lawyer. Now, you wouldn't take on a case that you knew you were going to get your teeth kicked in. You would say, no, I've worked way too hard for too many years to take on this loser. And I just wonder how many of these people are really going to be willing to say, that's fine. If he steps down, I'll take over.
Well, I would agree with you. I mean, essentially, if you're going to run for president, people have a pretty good idea for upwards of 4 years prior to you actually going to the polls. But yeah, in this situation, here we are mid-July. So we've got the rest of July, August, September, October, and a November election. So you're right. Who wants to blow a good opportunity at something that's kind of just slung together at the last moment?
Yeah, I mean, that's really it. Now, I'm not saying that there's not somebody out there that won't do it, but I would find it hard to believe that the people that are serious about wanting to be president would put themselves into that position. But again, I'm not often right, so we'll see what happens with that too.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was about to say, President Trump issued a statement earlier today, you know, not long after J.D. Vance to run with him as vice president on the ticket. Kamala reached out and said that, well, we would like to debate. We want to have a debate with this guy. And it's funny, all the lefties, you know, CNN and MSNBC and CBS and all those folks are thinking, well, she is just going to eat his lunch. But, you know, this guy's highly educated, went to Ohio State, went to Yale, you know, worked in some high-end industries, you know, venture capital and things like that. So he is not going to be run over by her. But today, President Trump put out something saying that, you know, we're not going to commit to that debate till we actually know who the vice presidential candidate could be. And he listed folks, and And he basically said to commit to it right now would be unfair to California Governor Gavin Newsom, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and whoever else Kamala Harris would pick as her running mate.
Well, and that's that's a good jab. Like you, though, I don't think it's going to matter which one of those people, if Joe Biden steps down, because I think that he's going to do a fine job against any of them or all of them. So I think that he's a like you. I think he's a bright guy. I didn't know anything about him, quite frankly. I've done a lot of reading about him, and he seems like a very impressive guy that comes from a very, very difficult upbringing, and somehow, made his way into the Marine Corps, put himself through Ohio State on a GI Bill, and then somehow ended up at Yale, where he met his beautiful wife. And he just seems to me like he's put together mentally and physically, and I think he's going to be a daunting force against whoever turns out to be the vice presidential nominee.
Well, and when you look at him, let alone is he humble, a former Marine Corps veteran, or actually a Marine Corps veteran and Ohio State and Yale graduate. His wife is also a minority. So he is the father of some blended children, which a lot of the Democrats out there would really appreciate, because he is just not your typical white bread Republican political candidate anymore. So we're going to close this out, but I wanted to give you a little bit more, Kamala. I know you had to take your headphones off last time, but if she indeed has a debate with J.D. Vance, this is the phrase you're going to hear, because, we've had some people go out and do this research, and it is like her buzz phrase. It's kind of like when Biden runs out of something to say, it's like whatever, or he goes, this is the USA. Well, this is what Kamala has to say. And we're going to close it out after this. Aaron, thanks for being on with us today. Hope to have you on again soon.
All right.
Very important, as you have heard from so many incredible leaders, for us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past, but the future. I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. What can 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 be unburdened by what has been.